Mike and Mike are back with an all-new episode talking about the real estate market in January. Are prices going up? What about inventory? How can a consulting expert help you with your investment? Tune in to find out on the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast.
Hi, everybody, and Happy New Year. 2023 is with us once again. My partner in the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast, Mike Ferrante. Mike, how are you doing today?
Fantastic. Glad to be here.
Okay, well, before we started this podcast, Mike was relaying a little story he had. So why don't you encapsulate this down to a little 1 minute or 30-second elevator speech? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Real estate transactions sometimes get derailed due to losses. And a good example is a fire. So you're buying a property, there's a fire. Does that mean the deal's dead? Not necessarily, because most purchase agreements have a clause that says the seller can fix the property and move forward, or the buyer can accept the insurance proceeds and still move forward with the purchase. So that's what happened on this one, and the deal's just kind of off the rails, and we're trying to get it back on.
Okay. Now, one of your teammates is just kind of like throwing up his hands. Well, I guess this is a done deal, right? We're not going to name any names. We're not trying to get anybody in trouble, but
yeah,
right?
Everyone was kind of floundering, saying, well, what do we do now? I guess we can't do anything. And the reality is you can do something.
Yeah. Now look at, when I was pushing you and I was saying, look at, time is money, folks. You just got done hand-holding a guy, making this deal continue. And it's not even your client. You're stepping in to help a teammate. And I was telling you, look, you got to get, your time's got to get covered on this. Okay? Your time's got to get covered. And at the end of the day, everybody, if you're an investor calling us up, which you should, if you're interested in Cleveland, we can definitely save you a lot of money, a lot of headaches, a lot of nightmares if you just use us as a consulting resource. Right? We've done podcasts on that, Mike, correct?
Yeah. Well, there's that little blurb that goes around Facebook once in a while that says, oh, it's $1,000 to do the job. And the customer says, $1,000, I could do that. So I'm going to go buy my tools and I buy the lumber and then, but how do I do it? And, like there's the list of all the value that goes into that $1,000 job. And then at the end of the day, the customer goes back to the contractor and says, well, gosh, now I see why it was $1,000. Yeah. You're paying for the knowledge and the experience and, having the truck full of tools.
Exactly. And nothing, look there's an old adage, I can't afford cheap.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
I've had conversations with my wife where she said, well, I bought this on sale and I'm looking at this raincoat and I'm thinking to myself, that's got maybe 6 months before it falls apart.
Yeah.
And sure enough, 5 years later, 4 raincoats later, you factor up what you bought on sale and you thought to yourself, well, look at, if I spend, $200-$300 on a Patagonia, I'd still have it and probably have it for 20 years.
Yeah.
So look, you get what you pay for. And, we were just talking about trying to get some slate guys out, right? Right, Mike? Tell that story.
Oh, yeah. A while back, we were trying to get a slate inspection and a certification on a roof, and we called all the big players, even some of the small players. I mean, I was on Google just looking for slate contractors. All of them, we can come look at it in 6 months, 8 months, 4 months. That's just to look at it. That's not even doing the work.
Yeah, but I'm saying, pay for their time. They are a consultant. No wonder they don't want to go out and look at it. They think they're bidding on a job. You're not bidding on a job. You're not bidding on a job. You are a consultant on this sale. So charge $150 an hour for your time. Believe me, people are going to pay for that. Mike, we've got people calling us, investors, sellers, whatever. They need an estimate for the point of sale violations so they can put money in escrow. Right now, we don't know whether we're going to get the job or not.
That's right.
Now, instead of telling them, hey, we're 3 months booked out, which is really code for I don't want to work for free, right? That's what that's about. We just tell them, we charge $150 for the first hour and $75 for each additional hour. Usually these point of sales take about 2-3 hours to do. And we'll probably say, hey, listen, for a 20-page point of sale, it's going to be $500. All right. And if you give us the work, then we just deduct it from, the estimate, because we got the estimate time built into it to the cost of the job. They're happy. 9 times out of 10, people will say, thank you. When can you get out there? We go out there. It takes us 2 hours. We give them a bill for like, $225, $250. Everybody's happy, right?
No doubt. Yeah. Well, with these slate companies, they understood that this was an inspection. And if they found any work, oh, well, you're missing 4 slates, then they would bill on top of it for that. So, but these guys, I just don't understand how you can have a business that you can't even show up to a customer's house for 6 months.
How about just showing up for 1 hour? How about doing 3 of those calls on a lousy day? Now, folks, this is how my brain works, okay? Because I've been working on my own since I was shoveling snow when I was 10 years old. See the need, fill the need. Look, it's a rainy day, right? The crews aren't going to be out there working anyways. Or guess what? Maybe it's high winds, or it's 20 degrees, but you can still see the roof. You can do an inspection. You can charge $250 per inspection. You'll be out there for an hour. You'll do an inspection. You get your binoculars. You can look around. You've got X number of years experience. And there you go. You just did 3 or 4 inspections in a half a day and made $1,000. Now, what's wrong with that?
Yeah, on a day that you couldn't do any other work. So it's just a bonus.
Yeah, exactly. Now, there's not a whole lot of people that think out of the box. That goes for every profession out there. I mean, I'll give you another example. And I know this is, indulge me, folks. It's the new year. But thinking outside the box, we have people in the Philippines who work for us now. We've got 4 women in the Philippines. One of them literally covers the phone. Her name is Melanie. So if you folks call us and say, or email us and say, look, I want to get a quote, or I need to hire you guys as a consultant, guess who the first person is getting back to you? Usually within an hour or 2. And that's Melanie in the Philippines online. Everybody's happy. Now that's called thinking outside the box. And so if you're investing in real estate, it's not like it was 20 years ago, right, Mike? Everything's done online now. You're talking to people in Israel, like we did a week ago with some investors in Israel on a Zoom chat. So, whether you're consulting, whether you're stepping in to bail out a teammate, that guy owes you a bottle of wine at least, or a $50 certificate to some vegan restaurant, right, Mike?
That's right.
All right. Well, enough of all these little mini rants. Let's get to the task at hand, which is the statistics. So Melanie, who, by the way, also edits this podcast, Melanie, put a little drum roll here for Mike Ferrante as he gives the people out there who've been waiting with bated breath for the latest stats. You're the Steve Kornacki, Mike Ferrante, of the real estate numbers. Go ahead.
All right, so it's heat check time. I know that we keep talking about, the rates are going up and the market's going to crash. And, there's all these predictions about how much of a beating the real estate market is going to take. I guess let's start with price. I'd like to take a look at Northeast Ohio, basically Cuyahoga County, single families. And one of the numbers I track is median sale price. Last month, $183,750. Now, what does that mean? It's higher than a year ago this time. A year ago this time, it was $174. So we're nearly $10,000 higher on median sale price. And if you look at the last 5 years, it looks like the old Big Dipper at Jogga Lake. It always trends upward, but it gets a little lower in the winter and higher in the busy months. So very, very steady as far as price. Now, the other thing I like to look at is the number of days to sell a house. Mike, you and I remember like it was yesterday, the big crash of '08 that lasted through about 2012.
Yeah, it wasn't number of days, it was number of months to
That's
sell a
right.
house. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, we were like 6 months was no big deal. No one thought twice about a house being on the market for 6 months. And, at the very bottom, the inventory shortage that we've experienced, it was just this past year. We got down to single digits, 7 days to sell a house in June of 2022. Now, what we're used to in our market is during the summer months, spring, summer, fall, about 30 days. That's the quote normal time to sell a house. And in wintertime, that usually about doubles. So 5 years ago, 62 days was the normal, the median time to get a house under contract. Last month, 29 days. So it's still a pretty hot market, meaning that we're selling houses now in the dead of winter like it's summer, like it's June. So just to kind of put it in a perspective that people will understand.
Okay, let me ask you a question about that, because we're doing our own kind of lab experiment. We've got a couple of our properties right now, our short-term furnished properties that are vacant. They're all cleaned up. Beds are made. House is furnished. Heat is on. Snow is plowed or snow is melted. And we just put a couple of houses on the market just to test the January market, right?
Right.
Now, we've got a couple of feedbacks from people who saw it. Our Kingston house, they say, well, it's a corner lot, not interested. We need a bigger backyard. Or their Forest Hill house, they said, well, it's a little dated, blah, blah, blah. Now, how many showings? I mean, let's get deep down in the numbers. How do you know in that first week or two whether this house has got no traction, or does some offer just come out of left field within that window of 28 days or whatever you're saying?
Yeah. So typically we know what kind of action we're going to have. So I love restaurant and fishing analogies. I'm going to use a fishing analogy for this one. When you go out fishing, if you're with some brilliant charter captain who knows where all the fish are biting, when you go out on the lake and you go to your first hot spot where the walleye are always biting, you can pretty much tell right away what kind of day you're going to have. So yes, the captain may say, well, they're not biting here. Let's go to this spot and let's go to this spot. And sure, by the end of the day, you're going to end up catching something probably, but by the time you hit that first or second spot, whether or not the fish are biting that day. It's the same kind of thing with real estate. We know within the first week, typically, if we've got the house priced right. We know that if buyers are coming in and some of them are expressing interest and maybe some of them aren't, we know we're using the right bait, meaning we have the price right, we have the house prepared properly. But if we're hearing crickets, or we've got 10 showings and 10 out of 10 say thanks, but no thanks, we know we've missed the mark. We're either at the wrong price, there's something wrong with the house, whatever. There's something wrong. And no matter how long we wait, we're probably not going to catch any fish.
Okay, so your wait would be how long? Would you say give it a week?
Well, I know people ask me this all the time. I sit down with a seller and they say, well, Mike, how long do we wait to make an adjustment in price? And I always say it depends. So it's kind of like a doctor treating a patient. I guess I didn't throw that into the mix of my favorite analogies. But hey, if I'm treating the patient and the vital signs are dropping drastically, well, I'm gonna do something now. If I'm
Right.
not sure and I need more data, I'm going to wait. I'm going to say, hey, this might be working. This medication might be
Yeah.
working. Let's give it an. So, quick rule of thumb, yeah, 7 days is kind of a golden number where I'm going to start like seeing what's going on. I've
Right.
made adjustments as fast as 5 days, though.
Yeah.
When the writing was on the wall.
Yeah, I'm thinking of one of these houses that we have. We might be too aggressive on price, and that's the Forest Hill house. But I keep thinking of back last year. So last summer or was the summer before? Man, it's all a blur when you start getting old. But our Ellesmere property, remember we put that on the market,
Oh yeah,
and that's when you had to pay me back on those appliances. So you remember that house, right, Mike?
sure. Yep.
You gave those appliances away. But anyways, we put that on for $290. Now, a year ago, a year prior, if somebody said, I'll buy that house for you for 210, I would have said, take it. I probably had it valued 210, 220, something around there. But I mean, it was so white hot that I said, let's just try it out. It's vacant, it's furnished, it's all cleaned up, it'll show well. It was in June. We had a gap until the next tenant moved in. And we said, all right, we got a window. We had it on 290. We waited, had a few showings. We waited. 1 week later, we were ready to pull it because people moved in. All of a sudden, somebody made an offer. For I think it was like 288 or something.
Yeah.
And we took it. So, and the same thing happened with the Blackmore house. We had, we just sold that house across the street from us. Great buyer, young woman. She loves the house. She's going to be a great asset to our street. And it was time for us to move on. But again, we put it on the market, and then all of a sudden, 1 week later, we had an offer, which was a fair offer. So, comment?
Hey, let's stop here. We got to pay some bills. 30 seconds, and we'll be back. If you've been listening to this podcast, then you understand or should understand the pitfalls of investing in Cleveland real estate. Say you're looking for an investment property to rent, and these are the things that could happen and often do. You overpay for a house, and it's in the ghetto. Then you find that it's a money pit with endless surprise repairs. Your hapless property manager, who may be the brother-in-law of the realtor, gets a tenant who after 3 months stops paying the rent. Then the toilet explodes, and you have nobody to repair it because, guess what? The property manager is not answering the phone. Yep, that's the ugly side of the Cleveland real estate market. But we have a solution. Buy one of our properties. It's been inspected. It's been vetted. It's in a rock-solid part of town. It comes with a Gold Star tenant paying top dollar rent, and we manage it. Call us at 216-371-8160 if you're interested.
Yeah.
1 week.
So there's always exceptions to every rule, and like I said, sellers ask me all the time, what's the right amount of time to wait? What's the formula? And unfortunately, there really is no set way to know. I'm sure people listening to this podcast are saying, well, yeah, one time I sold a house and I waited 6 months and I kept my price exactly the same. And we only had 3 showings and someone finally came in and gave me my price. So you just have to stick to your guns and wait. Well, sure, that can.
And how much
happen.
did it cost you to hold that house for 6 months?
There you go.
Really, property taxes, heat, electricity, you cut the grass. Yeah, okay, pat yourself on the back, my man.
Yeah. Well, and then for every argument, there's a counter. Oh, yeah, but I was living there, so it didn't matter to me. I needed to live somewhere. So look, I mean, there's always an exception. There's always someone who had a different experience. But in general, when the patient's not getting better, you have to change the treatment. So if we're selling a house and there's just so little activity, like we know that either we've done a bad job marketing, which doesn't happen, but I always check that. I'll look at the photos, I'll look at where we're placed, how we're positioned, where we're doing our additional advertising. And if we're getting activity, like if I'm getting tons of hits online, if people are looking at the property on Zillow and all the other hundreds of websites, but no one is scheduling a showing, what does that tell us? It's probably price.
Right. Exactly. They're running the comps on the neighborhood. They know, and they're saying, "Wait, this guy's brain dead." Although I have to say, last year I saw some houses on next street over from me on Westover, 325. I'm like, really? Took a couple of weeks, but they sold it.
Yeah.
So
the last 2 years were an anomaly, Mike. So I mean, you and I both know, and most everyone listening, if they're following real estate at all, they know that the last 2 years were just kind of weird. You could almost
the last year. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, 7 days market time being the median, you could almost price a house however you wanted and you would get offers. Now, here's where the problem occurred was the appraisal, and that's where you had neighborhoods where people were coming in with cash, no appraisal, and that was the only way you could buy a house in these neighborhoods where the prices got pumped up so high. Like think of Beechwood, the Orthodox neighborhoods of Beechwood. You have this East Coast money or Israeli money coming in these Orthodox neighborhoods. The only way you could buy a house there for the most part was if you had cash, because for the price you had to pay to compete, your bank would never give you an appraisal, or you had to bring in a ton of cash to make up the shortfall in the appraisal.
Okay, well, let's get back on the road here. What other fun stats do you have for us?
Yeah, tangent alert, right? Okay, so the other two, there's two other numbers that I always track because they're good indicators of what's happening. And unfortunately, these are trailing indicators, but we watch the trends, and the real estate market doesn't pivot on a dime. It's not like this month market time is going to be 29 days and then next month it's going to be 69 days. It just doesn't happen. These changes are slow. So following the trailing indicators is okay. But the other two numbers that I follow are number of listings, and that's this whole inventory shortage that we've been talking about for the last couple of years, and there's no short-term relief in sight. So last month, active listings 2,300. By comparison, 5 years ago in December, 3,900, and that was the beginning of the drop in inventory. The rest of that year we were at 4,000 plus. So we're at roughly half the number of listings that we should have in a balanced market. And then of course the other number I track is number of sales. That's the number where realtors should be paying attention, because if sales drop, the number of sales drop, that means there's going to be fewer transactions to go around. If you're an agent who sells 10 houses a year and the number of transactions drops by 20%, now you're only selling 8 houses a year. Now, will you still be able to eat? Hopefully, but it's going to impact your income if you're a realtor. But anyway, we're not seeing a huge drastic change. It was 1,100 transactions last month. By comparison, we hover around 1,000 a month in the winter months. So it's really not out of line. Summer months, by comparison, people are saying, okay, well, what is it in the summer? 1,800 transactions in summer months.
Okay. Now, here's a good tip to everybody. If you're looking to vet a realtor, and I'm not a realtor, I just play one on TV, right, Mike? But one of the ways that you can vet a realtor is ask them to give you those kinds of stats, not just the comps in the area, but the stats, the trend lines. Is it hot, cool, somewhere in the middle in terms of, I would think that's a good way to tell if somebody knows what they're doing in the real estate market.
So important, Mike. So, to make an analogy to medicine again, if you're going to a doctor and they're still doing things the way they were done 10, 20 years ago and not up on the latest technology and tools, devices, whatever, that's not a good indication. It's like that in any business. If I'm hiring you and you're still using an anvil to make your hinges or something, I don't know. I can't. You probably have a better analogy than I do, but they got to have the right tools and knowledge and information to do the job. So I think that if you're not up on those numbers, that's not a good indicator.
Yeah, and you would think that also, if they're 20 years behind the times, they're going to speak more and more about having open houses. Is that a tip-off, Mike?
Well, if you talk to a seller, sellers want you to do everything. They want you to do open houses. They want you to advertise in the paper. They want you to stand on the corner with one of those signs that you twirl to say "house for sale" down here. Literally, sellers would have you do every single thing that is possible. Hey, how about a billboard on 480 saying that this house is for sale? Sure, we could do all that.
How about those pennants and those blow up 25-foot cartoon figures in your front lawn, right?
Yeah, the things with the hot air in them that shoot up the little like wiggly guys. Yeah. There's so many marketing channels. What we have to do as agents is figure out where our money is best spent, because what's really weird about our business, Mike, and I don't think a lot of people realize this, they think that, well, we get compensated somehow. That if I work, I get paid. Well, not in real estate. We're actually in a business where we invest on the front end, labor, maybe our assistants, marketing money, and we only get paid if we succeed in putting the transaction together and close it. It's not just, hey, we brought you 5 offers. Well, sorry, if that deal doesn't close and transfer, we don't get paid.
Right.
And my broker always says, attorneys should be compensated the same way. That if they don't win the case, they don't get paid.
Don't get me started on that one. That's a tangent alert.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I remember doing some work for a guy who's an attorney, and he said, well, how much is it going to cost? And he goes, well, and then he says to me, I couldn't believe it. He said, well, if it takes less time, am I going to get a discount? And I said to him, he's a lawyer, and this is after I got some god-awful bill from a lawyer for accomplishing basically nothing. And I looked at him, I said, you've got to be kidding me. So let me get this straight. If it takes me longer to do the job, can I charge you more? I'm happy to do it. I would love to do that. In fact, I think it would be fair to do that, given how you charge. I don't even think I got the job, but I said to myself, that is the last guy I want to work for.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, hey, if you're looking to hire a realtor, and I'm the realtor playing one on TV, and I walk in there, I'm going to say to you, look, what do you care what I'm doing? At the end of the day, you want to get your price without having to put a lot of money into it, right?
Yeah. Well, we get that same question. Well, if the house sells in a week, do you charge me less? So it's basically, so you're saying if I do my job really well,
you get less money.
Do I get less money? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, anyways, okay, Mike. Any final thoughts on the stats?
I mean, I'll make a general comment about the market. Look, I'm not just trying to twist statistics to say everything is fine with the market. That's not at all what I'm trying to say.
I think the market's cooling, Mike. I just get this feeling.
No, you're 100%
it ain't the weather.
And that's why I wanted to say that. I'm not just trying to spin this into, oh, everything's great. Don't look up like that movie. Oh, no catastrophes. I just don't think it's a catastrophe coming. I think that.
Oh no, I don't think so.
People back in the day, we'd kill to sell a house in 29 days.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is that people have a very short memory, and all they remember is that 7 days to sell a house, multiple offers the first weekend. That's not normal. We've never experienced anything like that. So when I say, look, don't worry, it's taking 30 days to sell a house, the good news is that prices are still trending upward, values are not plummeting, so there's no warning signs of a crash is all I'm saying.
Yeah, but it could be a good time to buy if you're an investor out there looking for that house that's been on the market for 60 days. Buyers are starting to hit the panic button. You come in, kind of like the house we bought on Fairmont. I mean, there was a big price drop. They wanted to cash out. They could see interest rates were rising. And in fact, for a lot of people, they're thinking interest rates are going to keep rising. So I got to take the money and run. So I think it's a good time to buy. I think if you have to sell, be realistic about what you're asking. Make sure it's cleaned up, windows washed, the whole due diligence, because, the days of people just buying the house as is because they were so desperate to buy a house, those days are gone. That window is closed.
That's right. Don't hang your hat on last year's news. You have to be realistic once again, just like it was 3 years ago. Just be realistic.
Right. Exactly. Okay, Mike, I got one last question for you, because I can see we got about 6 minutes left on our Zoom meter. And that is buying a house that has a double lot. And then looking at that as a speculative, where you fix the house up, you buy it, but then you build another house. In the Cleveland market today, what would you estimate price per square foot? Like a 2,000 square foot house, if you had to build it new. And you went through this experience.
Yeah. We just built our first spec house, right? So are you asking me cost to build or price if we try to sell it?
Cost.
Well, think we're
Square
over
foot.
100 a foot for anything decent. Is it possible to build less? Probably. But if you're hiring out, subcontracting everything and buying decent materials, building a decent product, I think that you're probably in the low hundreds per foot, and those costs could get all the way up into the high hundreds per foot. So I'd say 120 to 180 per foot, depending on the quality of construction, materials you're using, et
Right,
cetera.
the digs, the stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because we're looking to, as you know, subsidize that Fairmont house that we bought. And we've got just a vacant lot. Came with the property. It's vacant. It's got a second driveway that goes right up there. It's going to be, real easy to move all the heavy equipment in there. And we're thinking of just, okay, if we're going to build this, we're looking at a ballpark of around 150 a square foot. Because again, we're doing it in-house. Our company is.
Yeah.
So we're figuring if we can do this, a 2,000 square foot house for 300 to 350,000, and would have radiant heat floors, would have geothermal built in. It would have really good materials. I'm not talking super high end custom, but I'm thinking of building a house using 21st century supplies where it's factory made, it's all insulated.
Sure. Mike, you know what's interesting? I saw a stat, some crazy number. I'm going to get the number wrong, but it was something like 17% of the new construction homes being built are being built as rentals.
Yeah, wow.
Up from like 7%. It's some big increase like that, like a 10% increase in the new construction housing being built specifically to be rented out.
Wow. Well, listen, let's stop it here because, next week we'll talk about get your stats together, draw on your experience of building your own house, your own spec house, and let's talk about that next week. All right?
Like fun. Yep.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Go sell another house.
I'm off. Take care.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast with Mike Reilly. Please add our show or follow us on Spotify, Overcast, Apple Podcast, or Spotify. Leave a like or comment on the video. All engagement is appreciated. Subscribe to us on YouTube as well for video content coming soon. For any Cleveland listeners or Cleveland Browns fans, you can check out our other podcast, Cleveland Browns Anonymous, for our weekly group therapy session. This is also on all the same platforms as the Cleveland Real Estate Investor.